Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
How would you describe the perfect or ideal office manager in a dental practice? Well, a lot of that depends on how you define the position to begin with. Way back in episode 19, I discussed how we here at MGE view the office manager position along with its responsibilities, duties, and outcomes. And in a nutshell, if you want long-term success in your practice, an office manager is one of the most, if not the most important hire you're ever going to make as a doctor owner. So if that's the case, where would you find this person? What qualities would you look for? And while nothing is guaranteed in life, what are the boxes you'd want to check to at least feel comfortable about making someone your office manager? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host, and I'm joined this week by Sabri Blumberg, our Deputy Chief Operating Officer. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you've heard Sabri quite a few times. She's probably my most frequent guest. Would you agree, Sabri?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you've been on quite a bit.
Yeah.
To tell you a little bit about Sabri, Sabri is our Deputy Chief Operating Officer here at MGE. She's actually our top technical person, meaning that she is in charge of all of our technical delivery. And Sabri, I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that you worked with several thousand clients over your time here.
That sounds about right.
Right. And I wanted to have you on this week mainly, and as you know, but for the listeners, because you've been involved integrally with helping clients select the correct office manager, grade office manager performance, probably more than anybody else here in the company.
Sure.
Along with training these individuals.
Yeah.
Not just the office manager, but the doctor as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So now we're looking at, well, I guess before we get into how we find one, how would you briefly describe the office manager position the way we see it?
Okay. So usually in dentistry, an office manager is more of an administrator. Right? Or sometimes they're just a competent worker, right? So somebody that's on the front desk that knows everything about the front desk, which would be considered a good worker.
Okay.
Right? Or a very competent employee. Or an administrator. Sometimes they do more than just run the front desk. They may be involved in basic bookkeeping, paying bills, maybe hiring, things like that.
Okay, so that's
right?
the conventional view of managers.
That's the conventional view of a manager. But when you look at a manager, managing means you're actually doing something. It's a doingness, right? And managing means you're running the place. You are responsible for the expansion and profitability of the practice, and that includes the quality of the product of the practice. And when I say product, I mean actually are we turning out healthy, happy patients?
Okay.
Right? And that's what an office manager is responsible for. So that means they have to be conversant in management, in getting people to get the work done, in how to organize things so that it's productive, how to turn a profit in a business. It's really the business end of dentistry that they run.
Yeah, and I guess if for, I talked about this way back when, and we talk about this with clients all the time too. The problem when you see a lot of doctors, they have to know how to manage themselves too, which is another question I was going to ask you later.
Yeah.
We get people, when we train a manager, we always train the doctor at the same time.
Yes.
Some people wonder, well, why can't you just train the manager?
Well, because then the owner has to stay in control of the business.
Right.
And you also can't be in a condition where your office manager goes skiing and, God forbid, breaks their legs. And now the whole thing goes like a bad souffle.
Well, you can manage with broken legs, though.
Whatever.
You can't run.
They're in traction.
There you go. But I guess where it goes wrong, too, is the doctor really in most offices is the primary producer.
Yes.
So who's watching the store? Who's managing the business while
Right.
you're producing? And
Right.
you're not going to manage at night and in the morning before you start seeing patients.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really making it possible for the doctor to produce.
So the manager is the person running the business,
Correct.
essentially, for all intents and purposes.
Correct.
With oversight from the doctor owner.
Correct. The manager runs the business, is responsible for the profitability and expansion of the business, and the doctor is responsible, when they're being the doctor, for the product of the business, meaning a healthy
Dentistry.
patient.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so then with a new client, so this is what we're looking for. We're not just looking for somebody who's really good at filing insurance. I mean, that might be one of their skills.
Well, it's something they certainly have to understand.
But that's not just their job.
No.
In other words, they're a manager.
Yeah.
So when we're looking for one of these, why don't we take it through the process of we just brought in a new client.
Yeah.
And they're getting onto the MGE Power Program. And let's say, okay, so obviously we have a doctor because they're the client. And I know one of the first things you do is get into figuring out who's the office manager.
Yeah.
So how would this go? Let's say I came to you and I go, I have somebody that I call the office manager.
Yeah.
You know, they've been called different things. The office manager, the front desk manager, my business administrator, who knows? You know, there's zillions of different ways to name something. But I'm calling this person my office manager.
Yeah.
Right? How would you know if this is the right candidate to do what you just described?
Okay. So the first thing I find out is what they actually do in the practice.
All right, the current person.
The current functions of the person. So whether that's filing insurances or, sometimes they do some hiring, like what is this person actually doing right now? And then I take a look at, are they trainable to be an office manager, right? Like, can we actually turn this person into the manager that we're looking for this practice, depending on the goals of the doctor, right?
I mean, let's say, I'll just throw that in there for you because, we've had enough of these discussions with clients. So let's say I'm doing, I don't know, 80,000 a month and I want to do 200 a month and I want to cut back my hours. So that's my goals.
Yeah, you need a good manager to do that.
All right. So then you meet let's say I've brought my prospective manager with me, the person I'm calling my office manager. And you said something that I just wanted to drill down on there.
Yes.
If they could be trained to be turned into the office manager.
Right. Nobody's perfect. Usually when you hire to hire the perfect office manager, I've seen it happen maybe a couple of times in the 30 years I've been doing this. So it's very rare. So usually you're looking for specific attributes and is the person trainable?
So what would you be looking for there? I guess that's the question.
Okay. So I'm looking for somebody that's ambitious.
Okay.
Right? I'm looking for somebody that is upbeat. And I'm not talking about perky. I'm just talking about they have a good general outlook and attitude towards life.
Okay.
Right? And what I mean with that is, they're solution oriented. They're not problem oriented. They have to have some kind of vision that this is possible. If the office manager doesn't believe it's possible to create something like that, we're done.
So if you're interviewing me and the manager, let's say, and my manager says, you say, well, I as the doctor say, hey, I want to do 200 and blah, 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 and cut my hours back to 25 a week. And my manager is spitting out all the reasons it can't be done.
Right.
Then
that's probably not a good fit, right? But you can also ask questions like, how's it going? Like, let's say they're responsible for over-the-counter collections and insurance.
Right, so they file insurance over-the-counter collections. Maybe they do treatment. They're kind of being the quasi-treatment coordinator too.
Correct. Okay. So by just asking normal questions regarding how that's going, right, and having a conversation about them, you can get a good sense on where's this person's head at. Right. For example, if they're telling me things like, the economy's tight right now, people aren't really paying. I believe that we should do only what insurance covers versus what the patient needs. Right. I don't really like, you can just sense their attitude.
All right, so you're seeing in that attitude, this person already has a pretty non-winning attitude and is pretty stuck in a rut about how things are. Right.
They're not really asking questions like, I do my best and I try to present a treatment or whatever it is that they're doing. Sometimes you see these employees and they're filing insurances, and we all know dealing with insurance companies is a pain in the neck.
Yeah, that just can be demoralizing in and of itself.
But if the person's telling me, I'm having a rough time with insurance companies, they don't pay, it keeps getting worse, the reimbursement, it's no use asking for increases because they're never going to give it to us, things like that, versus somebody that goes, yes, and, I get every dime the insurance company owes us, and I fight for the patient. And, even though they may not be thinking about sales and things like that, and they're still, insurance driven, right? You can see that they are doing the best job they possibly can. And they're very, driven, passionate, good attitude, whatever you want to call it, about doing, about not giving up. Right? Like there's nothing we can do about it.
So they have some drive and some fight in them.
Yeah. It's hard to quantify, but you can kind of get a sense, and it's kind of an attitude.
No,
And you
I know
and
exactly
it's
what you're
hard
talking about.
to give specific examples, but if you're just present and aware when you're talking to somebody, it's pretty easy to pick up on what is this person have a positive or a kind of nothing can be done about it attitude.
Yeah, just this is the way it is and there's nothing we can do.
Right.
In which case, you may as well have nobody.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Now, one thing.
Yeah.
Because I've heard this before, you've probably heard this one, where maybe a client, and we'll get into this in a second, but a client has a dental assistant who has all those qualities you just described. But, they're only 24 years old. And the doctor is hesitant to make this person the manager because, they're not mature enough. Do you put any credence into that?
No, none whatsoever, because it's a personality you're looking for. It's certain personality attributes. Personality attributes? Is that even a word?
Yeah.
Okay,
it is. The personality attributes, absolutely. Yes.
That I'm
I think
looking.
it's attributes.
Whatever,
I'm kidding.
man.
Whatever.
that I'm looking for, right? So those attributes are usually not developed over time. It's just the person themselves are like that. So no, I don't give any credence to the age of the person because I've seen people that have been doing this a long time, and they are, they don't have that attitude at all, right? And they never developed it. It's just not them.
Right.
Right. It's the same as, okay, so I have an introverted versus an extroverted personality, right? And I'm looking for somebody to do my sales. Am I going to pick the introverted or the extroverted?
Right.
Right. It has nothing to do with maturity or age. It's just a personality trait.
The person can be 26 or 66.
Right. And if I'm an introverted person, right, that does not change over time.
Sure.
Right, unless they do some personal development to handle that, and that's not something you're going to do in a dental practice.
Right. No, that makes sense. So then I have, let's say, this person. You've interviewed them, and they're going to work out. So then we're going to train them. Great, right? Let's say I have this person, and they're not going to work out as the manager prospect, or maybe they can do something else in the practice or keep doing what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Or let's say I have nobody that I've posted as an office manager. So then what would you do with me then? Okay.
So if the office manager is not ambitious, outgoing, solution-oriented, responsible, like it's trainable, willing to be trained, right? Like the things that we're looking for.
So let's say I have somebody like that doesn't check those boxes.
No, but it's a competent, good worker, right? Well, you're not going to fire that person. So it gets a little sticky. So if that person is already called the office manager.
That's fun.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah. You can't take that title away from somebody because that's straight up degrading and it's going to create a problem, right? So usually what we do at that point in time is we give them the office manager title. They stay the office manager. Their functions stay exactly the same. And sometimes we kind of narrow their functions down to be responsible for one specific thing, but they're kind of the senior front desk person.
Okay.
Right? So
they don't change their pay or anything.
Oh, no. Okay, no. They're still the manager. But we bring in a business manager, right? And that business manager is not necessarily somebody that we're going to bring in from the outside.
Okay.
That is usually my last resort. The first thing to do is look within the practice. Is there anybody that does fit those attributes that we can train to turn into that person?
Which was part of the question in the sense of, or my next question, or part of whatever, right? So we got one, it's not going to be the manager. Okay, now we're going to look internally first. But that's the same thing we're going to do if we don't have a manager. Like I come to you, I'm like, yeah, I got 4 staff. I got a, dental assistant, a hygienist, and 2 people at the front. Who's your office manager? I don't have one.
Right.
So we're doing the same thing. We're looking at who of these 4 people, including the hygienist, right? Could be the manager.
That's exactly right.
And that's usually your first choice, correct?
Yes.
As opposed to going outside the practice.
Correct.
Okay.
That is my first choice. And you have to be kind of smart in the politics of all of that, the way that you handle that internally, right? Usually, sometimes you can't just come out and say, this is going to be my business manager because you have an office manager and this is a newer hire and it's just going to create World War III in your practice. Right. So you don't want to do anything like that. You may have to say something like, I'm going to utilize utilize this person to help me with some management because they have time availability, or I'm going to help this person's going to help me with executing some things that I want done to run the practice, right? So that it looks more like they're working directly for the doctor, facilitating their plans so that they can build up some status. So you don't always immediately just give them that title if it's going to create upset in the practice.
Okay, so we've gone from, let's say I have somebody I'm calling my office manager when I come see you, and they're going to be fine, in which case we're going to train them.
That's easy.
And we'll talk about how to rank them later.
Yeah.
And then I've got somebody who we've called my office manager, and they're probably not going to cut it.
Correct.
Then we're going to look internally, preferably to elevate somebody to business manager, and worst case scenario, go outside the practice.
Correct.
So let's go to the third scenario.
Yes.
I come to you. I just don't have an office manager.
We have to hire somebody.
So are we looking inside first, or are we going outside the practice?
We're looking inside first.
So I'm going to look inside it. I'm going to look for somebody who has the qualities you just mentioned.
Correct.
Okay.
So the way that it's interesting because usually people who are already good salespeople also make good managers.
Okay.
Because they're kind of extroverted and not afraid to say what's on their mind. They're willing to give direction, right? And they can face some pressure. Right, because in sales, we can all agree there's certainly some pressure involved in sales ordinarily.
Sure.
Right, so usually those two go hand in hand. So the first thing I usually ask is, there's anybody that's helping you with the treatment planning or that's good at treatment planning, and take a look at how good they're actually at it.
So I might have, let's say, because I've seen this happen a couple times, a dental assistant, let's say, who does those with me, the larger treatment plans.
Or a hygienist. Sometimes they're great. Or any other staff member. I really disqualify nobody. From this, because we're looking for a manager.
So if I come to you and I've got 5 staff, let's say, and we don't have one that's selected, are you going to kind of interview me to go over who I have and what they do and that sort of thing? And then let's say we decide, well, my dental assistant, and I guess I've seen every position in the practice become a manager at some,
I have to. But really what you're looking for, and this is not an exact list, but so just get the sense of it. Like, can they sell? That's usually a good indicator. How long have they been there, and what has been their attendance record? What is their ability to get along with other staff members? Like, do they get along with other staff members? Personality-wise, are they introverted or extroverted? Are they in a situation in their life where they want to build a career out of dentistry? So those kind of things taken together. Are they willing to learn?
So we're going to go through my staff and figure that out. What if I have 2 people that fit that bill?
Great.
So would we try both out?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we say try, we would bring them in for training and see who might be the better fit.
Exactly. And we don't give them the title. You don't tell somebody that you're just trying out to see if they can train to be the manager. You don't tell them, listen, you're training to be the manager. You just tell them, we're going to do some additional training. I'm doing this training. I want you to come with me, see how you like it, maybe help me implement some things. And then you bring them down and they do some training, and then you get a sense for, is this a manager or not? That's why you can try 2 at the same time. And then if you don't want to make them the manager because they're not a good fit for that position, then they never had that idea in their head. As I said earlier, once you give them the title, you can't take it away.
You can. It's just not fun.
No, it just creates a mess.
Okay, so let's say I'm trying to play every scenario.
Yes.
I got 5 staff.
Yeah.
We've gone through all of them.
Yeah.
Nobody really fits the bill to be a manager. I have to go outside the practice.
Yes.
Are you going to have me placing an ad, or would we be looking at other people I might know first?
But either way, usually you can ask if there's somebody they know. Sometimes they have a friend, family member, somebody they already know, a spouse, things like that. That would be great for that. And, sometimes you hear that spouses are a bad fit for manager. Husbands and wives should not work together. I think that is completely untrue. From what I've seen, it's the best possible combination.
We've had a ton of spouses become the manager.
Absolutely. And it's great because they're both 100% vested in the business.
True.
As long as some ground rules are laid out and they know how to work together, and neither one of them is trying to do the other one's job or tell the other one how to do their job, or they're taking the work home, like usual things that we know are going to create fights.
Right. We did an episode on that a while back on working with your family, like setting ground rules. When you're at home, you're being those people.
Right.
When you're at work, you're being those people. You don't talk about it like at 11 o'clock talk at night. You're not talking about how you're pissed you are at an insurance company while you're laying in bed.
No, and also, it's like there's a certain respect you give another employee or person you work with. Sometimes between spouses, there's no manners.
Right.
Right. And then upsets get created. So as long as you're being normal and you're handling each other the way you would handle any other employee or staff member or coworker, it shouldn't be a problem.
That makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense.
So those are definitely usually known quantities are always better than unknown quantities.
Right.
Let's just say that. So if none of those exist,
right.
then we move outside. Let's hire somebody.
So then we're going to bring in somebody from the outside. And most likely, if there was really nobody on my team that I thought would be able to cut it on that job, bringing somebody in from the outside, I know it has it's just like any time you bring in an outside executive.
Right.
There might be some resentment here or there. But if there's really nobody who fit the bill, it's probably not going to be as bad as if there was somebody that I passed over that should have done it.
It's usually not a problem if there's nobody that could be the manager, or another time it becomes a problem is when you have a problem staff member, a person that really shouldn't be there. And now you try and you don't want them as the manager because this person is a bad fit.
So they shouldn't even be on your staff.
They shouldn't even be on your staff.
Of course, you don't want them as the manager, but you're leaving them there anyway.
That's correct. Yeah. And now we're bringing in an outside manager. Yeah, that creates a problem. But then the problem is not bringing in an outside manager. It's why are you not replacing that person with somebody that is a good fit? And there's usually a million good reasons why they're not replacing that person. The only problem is they're never going to expand unless they do.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, good. So now I know this may seem like a loaded question because we do training, executive training for doctors and managers.
Yeah.
But and maybe it's a silly question, but how important is it for this manager to get trained as an executive?
Well, how important is it for a dentist to have a doctorate?
Well, I think it's a legal point.
Right. But forget about the legal implications. I'm talking about I wouldn't want somebody working on me that didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
Conversely, I wouldn't want somebody running my business that's trying to figure it out. That's like me trying to figure out how to do a filling.
You're hoping they have innate knowledge on how to figure things out or work with people or some weird thing like that.
Right. Like eventually you're going to get it right. Right. You can learn through the school of hard knocks. Sure. Right. But how much money and time and heartache is that going to create?
Right.
So no, you either bring in somebody that already knows what they're doing, or you train that person. And personally, it's rare to find somebody that already knows what they're doing that doesn't need to be trained, because there's some problems with that. The first thing is that a dental office manager, any ad you're going to put out for a dental office manager is going to bring the traditional dental office manager that we discussed in the beginning of the episode. And that's not what we're looking for. And they usually come with a very high price tag.
Right.
So then if you bring in somebody who has, like I have a business degree, right? Now the problem with that becomes, but they have zero knowledge about dentistry, right? So they both come with, and usually those guys that if they're any good come with tremendous price tags.
Right.
So
that's why we have on the MGE Power Program. This is my selfless plug of the episode.
Yes.
We do the doctor and the manager do the exact same executive training.
Yeah.
So they're on the same page managerially.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because we brought up earlier, like why some people ask, well, why does the doctor have to get trained too? And you answered that question.
Yes.
Because obviously they have to know how to run the manager.
Yeah.
But the impact, like I know we were just talking about this a few minutes ago. We have a client who bought a practice down here. They practice in another state.
Yeah.
They got licensed down here in Florida, bought an office, put in, because this is now a thing. You'll see MGE trained office managers. That's a point on their resume.
Yeah.
That they did the office manager training program.
Yeah. It's funny. I get people calling me. Sometimes they're not even MGE clients. I don't even know this person, to verify that the person that they're hiring is an MGE trained office manager.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, because it does mean something.
Yes.
And so this client hired 2 trained office managers, that they knew for this office down here, because they're planning on opening more than one. And numbers wise, I think they bought the practice. It was doing 30 or 40 a month. It was associate driven practice. And now it does over 200. The first 3 months did over 200. And the doctor.
No, the first 3 months, like in the first month, it went over 200.
Right. And then it stayed there.
It stayed there.
But what's interesting is the doctor who bought it has only been there 4 or 5 days since he's opened it.
Yes.
So this is associates with MGE trained managers.
That's right.
So so if you need proof, and that proof is in the pudding, so to speak,
Yes.
that's the actual result that MGE trained managers get. So
That's
I guess,
right.
yeah. Anyway, that was the selfless plug of the episode. If you want to know more about the Power Program or the Office Manager Training, I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage.
Yes.
All right. And I'll stop the plug there.
Fine.
All right.
Oh, but one last point, since we're doing like selfless plugs.
Yeah.
Right? So not every person that walks through the door here goes onto the Power Program.
Sure.
Right? Sometimes they don't need it. Sometimes there's circumstances in their life that it's not the right time for them. Right? So at the very least, what I do when we identify a manager or when they already have a manager is have them watch the basic management videos on DDS Success.
The practice jumpstart.
The practice jump starts because that's cheap, that's easy, but then at least they have some idea on what they're supposed to be doing every day.
Okay.
And that to me is the biggest problem in dentistry is the office manager doesn't even know what they are supposed to be doing.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I'll put a link to that too on the episode webpage. Okay, so next question.
Yeah.
How can you see, so a client had a manager, let's say 3-4 months in, 6 months in. How do you know if this person is really making it?
Okay. So the first thing is obviously statistics, right? Is there improvement in the statistic or whatever goal the client laid out? Is there improvement towards reaching that goal?
That makes sense.
Right. And is that improvement viable? Meaning, is that improvement not so little that it really wasn't worth anything?
Okay.
Right. Like we're making strides towards it. I can see it, right? Everybody's becoming more competent. People have better control over what they're supposed to be doing. Patients are getting healthier, which then translates into bigger numbers. So that's probably the most telling
So really,
part.
the numbers are the big tell.
The numbers are the big thing. And the second thing is the office manager taking control of the practice? Meaning, are they saying what needs to be done? Or are they operating on the orders of the doctor only?
Okay, so are they, in other words, they're kind of grabbing the ball, or are they waiting for the doctor to tell them what to do?
Correct. I don't want a robot running your practice. I want them to think and take responsibility and come up with solutions on how the place is going to expand.
And we were going to offer up, we have this thing, is it Running the Day it's called?
Running the Day.
It's a handout
Yes.
where it kind of gives you an idea as the office manager on how to run your day, how to get the stats lined up and what you're supposed to be doing throughout your day to increase productivity.
Yeah.
And it's something you give to a new manager early on so they sort of get the flavor.
Yeah.
And we're going to offer that as part of this episode as a free download.
Yeah.
If you want to download it, there's a link to it on the episode webpage. You can download a copy of this. It's 5-6 pages, and it gives them some basic advice, I think, on what to do to get going, right?
Correct. And if you're going to download that, I would suggest you only take certain pieces that you start implement. Don't try to implement the entire thing at once.
Okay.
Because it's just going to be overwhelming.
Okay.
Just take certain pieces and start there, like with the morning meeting.
Right. Okay,
Right.
good. So you're looking at stats ultimately is what it comes back to.
Ultimately, that's what it boils down to.
All right, and then what might you see in those first 3 months where you go, yeah, this probably isn't going to work? What are some immediate just bad signs?
It's getting into fights with other staff members, is operating on orders only, is not getting through their training, numbers aren't going up, right? Generally has a bad attitude, right? That's what anything that you go, and, it's not getting along with the doctor. There's so
that's a
many,
problem.
and what it boils down to is that the doctor owner knows. They already know in their heart that this isn't working. They don't need me to tell them that. The biggest problem I see with office managers, training office managers, is the doctor knows, usually within the first few weeks, that it isn't going to work out because they are there. I am not.
Right.
And they're not just listening to themselves and going, this is not going to work, but they're hoping something is going to change. Right?
Miraculously.
Miraculously, this person's going to have a personality transplant or something crazy is going to happen, right? That's not going to happen. So the doctor has to understand that the office manager is their job. They're the owner. The owner appoints the CEO, right? It is their job, the manager.
So when you're saying, just to clarify, because you're throwing a few things out here.
Yeah.
So the owner's job is manager. ultimately.
Yes.
But so they're appointing someone to take that job from them.
Yes.
But it's interesting. You call the manager the CEO.
Yeah.
So the office manager is like the CEO of the practice.
Absolutely.
So the manager, the owner is divesting themselves of that job to give to that manager to do.
Yes.
So, okay. No,
Yeah.
it's
It's like a doctor. You're the main doctor and you can't do all the dentistry, so you hire an associate.
Right, to pick up fillings in emergencies or whatever.
Right. You are still responsible for that dentistry.
True.
You have to make sure that the person you hired can actually do that. You have to make sure that the person that you hired is clinically diagnosing the same things you would, right? Or similar, right? And is doing it up to your standards and handling the patient in a way that you want the patient handled, so there's no upsets and things like that.
But it's much easier to just blame the person for doing a bad job.
Well, yes.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
And I'm totally fine if you blame the person for doing a bad job as long as you handle it.
Right.
Right. So, but usually the same thing with the doctor. If you just look within you would, like, how crazy would that be to hire a doctor, just put him on as doctor, or hire an associate, just put him on as associate and never check the work or check the diagnosis or check how the patients are doing afterwards.
Crazy,
right?
but not unheard of, because we've seen practices like that.
Right, but it creates huge problems, right? And usually the owner doctor knows within a few days this is going to work or this is not going to work. Well, they need to have the same attitude towards the manager. That is their job as the owner. And they don't want to do it or they can't do it because they're in somebody's mouth. They need to hire somebody to take that piece of their job from them, but they are still responsible for it. And usually they know within a few weeks whether this is working or not. And if it's not working, it's not, oh, it's okay because it's just administrative. No, it's a 5-alarm fire the same way as an associate's not working. And you have to replace that person. I know it's a lot of work, right? And I know it's a pain in the butt. But if you want to achieve your goals in practice, you have to do these things just for a little bit and then the work goes away.
Interesting. And very well said.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, any last points you'd throw out there on this whole finding and posting this office manager?
Yes, dentistry is probably one of the funnest businesses in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's fun to grow. It's rewarding. You can create businesses where everybody has a good time. Your patients, your staff, you can bonus them, right? You can give them a life that they didn't think they could have in dentistry. You can have a life you never thought you would have, right? Dentistry is so great. You were talking to somebody yesterday and, I was sitting next to you, and you were telling them that dentistry is the second best business in the United States right now.
Well, it's the second least likely business to go bankrupt.
That's right. Yeah. And it's the second most recession-proof business in the United States. Besides, what is it, funeral homes?
Number one is funeral homes.
Funeral homes.
You always inevitably get that question, what's number one? And you don't want to really.
Not quite as much fun as dentistry.
No.
Right. So stick with dentistry.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the point is you went through all the trouble to get a dental degree. Right? It's not easy to get a dental degree. Otherwise, everybody would be dentists, right? But we have a shortage of dentists. That's because it's not easy to become a dentist. But you made it through that, right? Now, if you just put in a little bit of work to do it right, you could have a wonderful life. And that's what frustrates me most, I think, about people not taking responsibility for the executive hat and making sure that the office manager piece is done correctly. Like, don't screw around with it. Do it right? And you have a great life.
Yeah, good point. Because the longer you wait, the more time you're wasting, you can never get back.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, why would you want to destroy your life?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's going to make some funny quip, but there really isn't a good one for that.
No.
Okay, good. Well, Sabri.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I super appreciate it.
Yeah.
As always. And as downloads, don't forget we have a link to the MGE Power Program if you have questions about that. We also have the Office Manager Checklist, the Running the Day Checklist. You can download as well if you want to find out more about that. We also have a link to DDS Success if you want to find out more about that. And folks, if you have any questions about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.